Let's move over to another clip where the client has asked for some work to be done, and it's this one here. Let me play this back for a second, and we can see we've got this footage of two boats rocking in the water. Now what's being asked of us is to remove this logo that's in the front of the boat. Again, we're going to take advantage of the paint tool here with inside of Smoke's desktop tools, but then we'll come back right into the timeline and use another soft effect called the axis, which allows us to do masking and tracking and so on. So once again, I'll tap on the left or right, and we'll go back to our desktop. And I want to match out this clip and bring it to the desktop like we did before. So I can do that with a hotkey. And then I'm going to use another hotkey, and all I want to do is create one frame, which is the very first frame. And I can throw this away now. So if we go to our full view player, you can see what we have is just one frame, and it is the first frame. The idea here is I'm going to take this into the paint and again use those cloning tools. I'm just going to roto this out and clean this plate right up. Then we'll bring it back into the timeline and use the powerful tracking tools to go and isolate and track the corners. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's go back into our paint tool as I did before. I'll reset everything to start from scratch. And this time we'll just switch our brush to be the Recursive Clone. I'll zoom in a little bit. And once again, I hold a hotkey. I set where I'm going to take my pixels from. I just roto this out very quickly, quite easily, just like you would in any other paint program that you're probably familiar with, which is great, very fast, very efficient. Now, I also like to do this. Now that I've done my strokes and so on, if I feel like I want to correct or adjust something, I can easily come in here and switch my brush once again to be a different type of custom brush. In this case, a blur. I can come in here and I can just kind of blur some of the paint strokes that I created if needed. But let's go back to our desktop now, and here we have that new clip with the cleaned up plate. So we want to bring this into our timeline. So to do that, we're going to use some hotkeys, and we're going to set our in and out points, and then I want to navigate to the top layer, and again, use a hotkey, and just fit that inside of my edit. Now if we look at our standard player, you can see that the top layer has the still image, the first frame, with the rotoed out logo. And if I navigate down in my timeline, you can see we still have our original footage. The idea here is let's use the tracking tools to get the motion of the boat and then isolate this area. So with this top layer selected, I'll apply an axis effect, and I'll enter into the axis effect. Now, by default, this is a flat image, but on my surface controls for my top layer, I can switch this to be a bilinear. Now I have corner points that I can come in here and manipulate the corners if I need to. But what I want to do is track this to that logo. So I'll select my corner points and go back into the tracker, and this time I get 4 different tracker markers, which allow me to come and position them exactly where I want them to be around the logo, like this. Now before I perform the track, I'm just going to save this, because once again, we're going to repurpose this. Now, let's just click Analyze. You can see, again, the power of the tracker is just ridiculous, how well it does the job for me. I'll exit back to the axis controls, and you can see as I scrub, we've now taken the 4 corner points of the top layer and pinned them to that area. And I know you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, that's not what I expected you to be doing. Well, the idea is our tracker can be a tracker, and it can also be an offset. So now that I've set this to offset, when I return back into the tracker, I load my tracker setup that we just saved, and I step one frame, we return back to the axis. Look what happens. We now take that top layer, it's been repinned to its original position, but it has the movement and the motion from the movement of the boat. Now all I need to do is go into my masking tools and create a mask that's going to be isolating just the pixels that I want displayed or visible on that top layer. In fact, let's take a look at what the mask looks like. We can see we've got our clean mask. What I want to do is bring some softness to this. An easy thing to do is just adjust my offset inside or out. Now, in a case where you really needed more control of your gradients, what you can do is switch to what's called the advanced gradient. Now you have independent control of your softness and feathering for the mask at each control point. In this case, this is a little overkill, so let's just go back to the softness and leave it set to an offset of 9. When I return back into Axis and now go back out to the timeline, you can see as I scrub along, we've now rotoed that paint logo out perfectly. And let's see how long will this take to actually process. I click process and it's going to take a whopping 10 seconds to process and generate that file. Now I can play this back real time for you right in front of you. You can see how fast we were able to do that using our desktop paint tool and using the timeline. So this is a great example of just how powerful the tools are in Smoke, whether you're working at the desktop tools or you're working with your soft effects.